Hi guys, I'm really happy to be recording my second episode of It All Starts With Submission. So I just felt like I can sorry, I've got a cough, by the way, guys, and a bit of a cold. I just felt like it would be cool for me to have like a transparent conversation about my journey with forgiveness. I feel like it's been a very interesting one, and I would like to be able to look back at this and hopefully, by the grace of God, I would be able to see drastic growth in that present time. At that present time, if you know what I mean. The last thing I'd want is to listen back to this maybe a year from now and feel like I've somewhat gone backwards with my whole forgiveness. So God forbid. So I just want to kind of have this conversation about forgiveness, and hopefully it can help somebody that's listening, because I feel like that it has been probably the most instrumental part of my journey when it comes to how I've been able to be completely submitted to God without perversion. So what I mean by that is sometimes when you are harboring unforgiveness, it can kind of pervert what you it can kind of pervert the word of God. So what I mean by that is that sometimes you might read, the Bible at that time, and it might be interpreted something differently, or God might be trying to speak to you, and the thing is, because of what you are currently dealing with regards to the unforgiveness, you might not be able to hear him clearly. And I feel like this is quite common. Like in the Bible, it says that, like God needs a pure vessel, basically. So when he uses you, he needs a pure vessel. And I feel like sometimes, in the Bible, when you see in the Old Testament, he sent these prophets, like he'll send Elijah, or he'll send... honestly, I feel like this cold is just getting in the way of me like thinking about anything properly, clearly. But in the Old Testament, he'll send these prophets of God to get his message across. And sometimes in situations, I feel like God can speak to us in our dreams, where our dreams are like very uninterrupted. But sometimes, the shows that we watch and the music that we listen to, or the, books that we read can really seep into our dreams as well. So, sometimes, we find ourselves, if we're not a pure vessel, getting messages through third parties, which is not I don't think it's ideal, in my personal opinion. I feel like when you are a pure vessel, you have the benefit of hearing it clearly from God, and it's God. You're not interpreting it in a way that is convenient to you in that particular time. So let me tell you my actual journey. So as a young girl, I'd say, I was brought up by a single mother, and it was just my mother, myself, and my brother, younger brother. It was reasonably okay. My mum, she tried her best, and she had, ran a company, and things were okay. I'd say financially, she was doing really well financially. However, she wasn't the best at money management. So it wasn't that clear in our lifestyle. And then, but it was kind of like we were like the three musketeers. So, my mum used to always say it's us against the world and all that type of stuff. All of a sudden, when I turned about 15, my mum married somebody who was honestly a terrible person. And it kind of changed how I saw my mother. I then started to resent her. And then basically it kind of started this spiral of unforgiveness. And so I didn't forgive her. I didn't forgive anyone, to be honest. And so this was at 15. So basically, I was a very angry teenager from 15 onwards, to be honest. And certain things that I had experienced within the first year as well of me being, because we had just moved as well from London to an area. So I had experienced some very like strange things, somebody trying to plant drugs in my house, somebody trying to push me off a cliff in France. Like there's loads of very crazy stories that I can share, but to be honest, there's no point. So basically, I held on to that resentment for a very long time. It's more anger, to be honest, anger and unforgiveness. And because of that anger perverted the experience that I had with my mother prior to the arrival of the horrible husband that my mother had at the time. The marriage didn't last for long, thank God, to be honest. Honestly, I know that it sounds bad, but he was a terrible, terrible man. It was a terrible human being. And that was my first official experience of witchcraft that I had seen with my eyes. With my own eyes, I witnessed and experienced witchcraft. I saw it. By the grace of God, covered myself and my brother. But obviously, because my mother was affected by it, it affected all of us. So watching that was a big eye opener for me. And but instead of me looking at my mother as somewhat of a victim, because she was a victim of that situation, I resented her, because in my mind I thought, no, all my life I've seen this woman as a strong woman. She was very strong. Yeah, obviously she wasn't the most financially literate person, but she tried her best and things like that. I didn't see that. I just saw this person that, in my mind at the time as a teenager, just let all of this transpire. So basically, I feel like instead of me seeing my mother as a victim, because she was a victim of, she was under attack, to be honest, I didn't see that. And I just held on to this resentment, and it kind of changed my perspective and it changed and polluted the memories that I had of her prior to her being married to that person. And it's really interesting because I've just read this book called, what is it called? This Present Darkness, I believe that's what it's called. Anyways, it's a really good book. And if I can quickly get the exact name so you guys can probably, read it for yourself. So basically where is it? This Present Darkness by Frank Peretti is a very old book. So sometimes some of the things that he says, in my personal opinions, borderline problematic, but because it was written so long ago, it's not like they're not stopped by, he's not writing to be PC. He's just writing for the sake of writing. Do you know what I mean? And there's a very deep book about, spiritual warfare in a town and the power of prayer. And the thing is, there's a part in the book, spoiler alert if you actually want to read it, but there's a part in the book that basically a father, he's an editor of the local newspaper, and they are trying to attack this guy's family, right? They can't, for some strange reason, they can't attack the spiritual, the demons can't attack him directly. So what they're doing is they're trying to go through his family, by his family. So what they've done is they've kind of got his daughter into some new age witchcraft, basically. They've got her into he's kind of a Christian, but his type of Christianity is more very everything's fine, that type of thing, go on the Sunday, but Monday to Friday or Monday to Saturday, he's just like a normal person, whatever, instead of, there's different type of Christians. That's what I'm trying to say. Obviously, you got the Christians that they pray every single day, they read their Bible all the time and all that type of stuff. Whereas he's more of the Christian that, I go to church on a Sunday and that's fine. So his daughter doesn't necessarily have a relationship with God because she hasn't really been taught on a deep level about Christianity. She's just, she just goes to church on Sunday. So basically now she naturally is seeking something more because by default, that's how we are built, right? If you don't know Christ for yourself properly, it's very easy for you to fall into astrology, divination, all of that stuff. So basically, that's what happens in the book. So she falls into that and they get her to start looking into spirit guides and all this stuff. So anyways, through hypnosis, this is why I've always said, I don't mess with hypnosis, right? Because I don't know what type of stuff they're putting into you. So through hypnosis, they somehow convince her, and it's through the spirit of deception, that her father has molested her. So this is the thing. It's very easy for your memories, if you have experienced trauma, it's very easy for your memories to kind of shield you from that. As somebody who has actually experienced certain things and my memories have literally shielded me from that, as somebody who actually knows that it did happen, it's just that, for a long time, I didn't want it. I didn't even think about it. In this book, it definitely did not happen. So the spirit of deception told her that her father had molested her, which was not the case. So because of that, it told the spirit of deception told her this, and this was a form of attack on the family. And then by the end of the book, she comes to realization that that was not the case. It's not true at all. She has a very loving father who's not in the slightest bit like that. And obviously, by the end of the book, everything's fine. Cool. But it's interesting because when I was living with unforgiveness, I had perverted opinions of how I experienced life as a child with my mother. And when I mean perverted, I'm not using perverted in the sense of she had done anything to me. No, it was actually not in the sense of that, not in the sense of her touching me or whatever, but in the sense of her being verbally abusive and things like that. So there were, obviously, being brought up as a Nigerian, there are elements of upbringing that as Nigerians we experience that most people wouldn't, they don't experience at all. But the thing is that I would not be able to, I can't actually say that my mother was a typical Nigerian. And what I mean by that is that, for example, I stopped getting beaten probably about 5 or 6. And the thing is that, the probably even earlier, to be honest, I'd say a bit earlier, because my brother was still crawling. He's 3 years younger than me. So I remember the last day that I got hit by my mother, and it was a very big situation. And I think that the way that all of that transpired, I think that traumatized her, because she probably realized, oh my gosh, I could literally kill this girl. I'm not going to touch her. And she literally didn't touch me ever after that. So since then it was more go, kneel down, whatever, put your hands up, basically like a timeout. So that's what I experienced until I got to about teen, and until we moved, I'll say maybe until about 11, 12. And then she would proceed to just kind of just threaten to kick me out or whatever. That was her way of kind of handling my the misbehavior of a teenager or whatever. For the most part, I wouldn't say that I misbehaved, because I was a very obedient child, in my personal opinion, out of pure fear, to be honest. I don't want to get in trouble, but I'd say I'm obedient, but I still kind of voiced my opinion, which was rare, which whenever I speak to other Nigerians, they're like, opinion what? They look at me like I'm crazy. Like, you shared your opinion in your mother's home. I was like, yeah, I shared my opinion in my mother's home. They look at me like, yeah, your mom's not typical Nigerian. So I, from my experience, know, like, for example, when my brother and I discovered that there was a such thing as a dishwasher, we striked. We were like, wait, hold on a second. There's a machine that can do this for us. So we striked, and normal Nigerian parents will just hit you and be like, what are you talking about? Strike. Just go, wash the plates. Whereas we actually striked and succeeded. And my mother then proceeded to buy a dishwasher. And literally from that moment, we never had to wash dishes. We'll just, pre-rinse and put it in the dishwasher, and that was it, and we'll have to unload the dishwasher. And that was literally our job. So it was, I would say that overall, I can't say that my experience with my mother was that bad. Cool. However, the experience that I had envisaged at the time, and before I had forgiven her, because obviously I told you that from 15 up to about 35, I lived with unforgiveness towards my mother. I would say that I had differing views of how I was brought up. 1, 2, I also would interpret the way that she would say things completely differently to the way that she was actually saying it. So just before I turned 35, I decided that I was going to take a solo trip to Budapest. And this trip, it was really just on a whim. Like, I did not plan it at all. It was one of those things like, I got married quite young, got married at 22. And when I got married to, from the moment that I met my husband, I met him when I was just about to turn 20. Both of us are the same age. And I've literally done most things with him. So choosing to do this trip on my own just before I turned 35 was like a big deal. And I do believe now that it was God that prompted this trip, because realistically, there's like that moment of just being on my own is rare. For me, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't really have moments when I'm just going to be on my own. So went on this trip now and, booked a lovely hotel. And it was like a spa hotel as well. So there was a spa in the hotel. So going to hotel now, and I had a moment in the steam room where God was literally I was in the steam room for over an hour, which is insane. And I felt like God, I had my Paul moment Saul moment, until obviously he turns to Paul. So God literally was saying to me at this time that I need to forgive. But I've literally jumped, because I've been in therapy for over 2 years. I stopped after I came back from Budapest. After Budapest, I had one last session, and I said to my therapist, I'm healed. And she was like, great, but I had been doing therapy for over 2 years at that point. And I changed therapists. I changed my therapist beginning of this year, because I just decided that the therapist that I had at the time, she was great for personal growth and development, but not for forgiveness. And I was really even though it's not exactly what I was thinking at the time, it's what I knew I needed. Because when I first started the therapy with my first therapist, I said to her that I really want to focus on forgiveness. And she was like, no, but we need to dig deeper, dig into, dig why, whatever. And I knew what was the problem. I felt like it was a forgiveness issue, because I talk a lot. I'm a talker. Do you know what I mean? So it's not like I'm the type of person that will just keep my mouth shut. Everyone that knows me personally knows that I'm a bit of a chatterbox. So it's not like I'm the type of person that hasn't spoken at length about certain things. So with this particular situation, when I said that to my therapist at the time, she was like, no, we need to dig deeper. And I found at the time that I was kind of spiraling. So I just decided that I no longer wanted to speak about, I didn't want to dig deeper into anything, because I had already spoken about these things, and it was just unnecessarily triggering, because keep in mind that I had already perverted ideas and views about these things anyway. So at some point, last year, I decided that I was going to pay for therapy for my mother and I. So I paid for us to have some therapy sessions together, and that didn't go well at all. Definitely didn't. But the therapist that had witnessed my mum, I decided I was going to switch over to her because I felt like she had a good idea of who my mother was. And it actually helped moving forward with understanding the need for forgiveness and understanding the need for grace. And grace is something that I believe everybody deserves. Everybody's dealing with their own things. Like whenever I sit down and speak to my mother, I just think, wow, this woman's been through a lot. Like she's been through it. And the thing is that when you see a lot of people, when they're walking around, triggered or whatever, you have to kind of give some people grace purely because they're probably dealing with things that you can't physically see. You will not ever know. They're just walking around with pain or triggered for one reason that you'll never understand. So it's just a matter of giving people grace. I feel like, there's an example, for example, my husband and I, we just recently, I say recently, it's been over a year now, changed our car. But before we changed our car, we had just sold it back to the dealer. It was not the same dealer, but it was literally part of like the same, the same brand, whatever. So they were going to pick up the car and then drop our new car. That was the process. Cool. So we go to church, and then whilst we're at church, our car, the old car, gets hit. So now, obviously, if there's like a scuff or whatever on the car, it can devalue the car. So that's what happened. By the grace of God, there was a witness that saw the person hit the car whilst it was parked. So, that whole process, we had to speak to this guy, the guy that hit the car, and he was very angry at us that he hit the car. It was a very strange situation. And then at some point we contacted the brand, the dealers, and said, by the way, this is what happened. We're going to have to, renegotiate. And they were like, cool. What if you pay us this amount? So it was just about, let's just say it's about £500. So now we say to the guy that hit the car, do you want us to contact your insurers, or would you rather just pay us outright? Because it'll be faster for us anyways if you just give us the money and, so we can just get our car, basically. He knew about the stuff. He tries to contact the dealers. The dealers say, no, you have to give the money to them and then they'll pay us. And then he calls me in a rage. And the thing is that in that moment, God told me to be still. And so in that moment, he's like calling me and he's calling me all sorts of names. And I didn't respond. I didn't react. I didn't get triggered because he was calling me some names that were definitely not, it didn't make any sense. And then I said, I'm really sorry that you feel that way. I'll send you my bank details. So he then hangs up the phone, but immediately sends the money. Glory be to God. Cool. After that, God was like, look, this guy had not planned for this money, had not planned that this money is going to go elsewhere kind of thing. He had plans for it. And, now he's angry because obviously this thing happened and he has to give you the money. So you just kind of have to give him grace because, now he's giving you the money knowing that you're going to just get a brand new car. Meanwhile, this money, like he had plans to pay the bills, whatever. So that's what happened. He gives us the money. We give it to the dealers. We get our new car. Cool. It's not like it was brand new or whatever, but it's new. I'm talking about as in newer than the car that we had. Cool. So that in that situation, I had to be obedient to God in that moment because it was very easy to be triggered because I was being called all sorts of names. But in that moment, God said I should be still. And then he told me after the fact that, all of this is happening. Cool. In certain situations, you might look at somebody and you might think, why are they so angry? Why are they like this? And it's mainly because they're dealing with their own thing. And I feel like the way that I was walking around and dealing with life and handling life and all of that, because of the unforgiveness that I had towards my mother, it allowed me to kind of accumulate a whole list of people that I was now not forgiving. So the list started to grow. I was literally like, Sheldon, I might as well have created a black book app. You know, I'm a coder, so I could have done that if I really wanted to, but that would be really just going a little bit. That'd be weird. So I could have literally created a black book app of like all the people that I was walking around with unforgiveness with. When I was in the steam room, God literally listed all these people that I didn't forgive, literally every single person. And then he showed me different situations and scenarios that I misinterpreted due to anger, due to jealousy, due to unforgiveness, due to all these things. And I was like, oh my gosh. And sometimes when you're walking around with unforgiveness, it creates unnecessary bitterness sometimes, unnecessary jealousy. Like if you look at, for example, like the Cain and Abel story, right? Like in that situation, Cain could have literally just been like, okay, let me get you better fruit. But he decided not to. And then he decided instead, I'm going to just, do what I do what he did to his brother. And this is the thing, is like, it can literally just be a trickle effect. Everything kind of spirals and can make you do crazy things. So I feel like God was listing all these people that I was angry at and that I was walking around with unforgiveness towards. And the thing is that I feel like when you're also walking around with unforgiveness, it attracts similar type of people in your life. So it attracts similar people that are also walking around with unforgiveness. It attracts people that are walking around with pain. So that's why, you hear loads of people say, oh, trauma bond. You got all these friends that they're friends because they have similar trauma, and then as soon as that person is free from that trauma, they no longer relate to the other person that they became good friends with, because they no longer have that trauma to keep them together or keep them bonded. And the trauma bond thing is so real, because I feel like I attracted a lot of people that were angry. I attracted a lot of people that were bitter. I attracted a lot of people that didn't know how to love. I attracted a lot of people that didn't know how to care for me or care for themselves or care for people around them. Those are the type of people that I had in my life. And the thing is that when you are walking around with unforgiveness, like, you just make these bonds that can sometimes be permanent bonds. Like, for example, when you hear stories of people that they were brought up in an abusive home and then they marry somebody that's abusive or things like that, it's very easy for cycles to continue due to unforgiveness. So I feel like when you hear stories about, when you see other people that are maybe like very, they're just angry or they're very bitter or whatever, there's a moment you just have to give some people grace, because you just know that they're on their journey. They will eventually get to a place where they will be healed by the grace of God. When I was in the steam room, when God literally like gave me that list and he was like, I need you to forgive, he showed me different perspectives. Like, this is how you experienced it. So for example, there was one time when my mum came to the house and I made ayimashe, but I made a seafood ayimashe, which is it's not a thing. It's actually not usually a thing, but I made it and it was really nice. So my mum's eating this ayimashe and she's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. It was actually ofada, but which is basically, so for people that are not Nigerian or African listening to this, it's kind of like blended peppers, and that's really it, really. Blended peppers and onions, cooked in palm oil. So I know for people that are not Nigerian, palm oil is like the worst thing since sliced bread, whereas with the worst thing, it's not worst thing since sliced bread, but it's like the worst thing ever. Whereas with Nigerians, we use palm oil. It's very important in some dishes. So basically, I made this ofada stew, but with seafood, like prawns or whatever. So I made it now, and my mum comes to the house and she eats it and she's like, oh my gosh, who made this? This I can't believe this. Who made this? This is really good. Then Mike says, oh, Blessing made it. No. So at the time, I interpreted her response as Blessing can't do this, Blessing can't do that. Whereas God showed me that she was in awe. And the thing is that since then, I've, like, for example, I've made my mum a couple pieces, like I've made her a couple kaftans and things like that. And every time I make her anything, she acts like it's the most amazing piece of clothing that she's ever seen in her entire life. Whenever she sees my jackets that I make and things like that, she's just like, oh my gosh, your clothes need to be in Harrods. This. Like, she can literally be my biggest fan. But, obviously, like, nobody's perfect, and she's got her imperfections. That, sometimes she says things that still rubs me the wrong way. I'm going to be honest with you. And that's a journey that I'm still on, because it's like, I would like to be in a place where I'm around her. And even when she says annoying things, it just kind of like, I just brush it off. It's like, oh, whatever. Do you know what I mean? Whereas, like, if I'm around her and sometimes she'll say annoying things, it can still make me cringe. Before I forgave her, it would trigger me. I would literally be triggered for like a whole month. I'll be talking about her and just angry, like, can you believe this woman? Whereas, like, now, if I'm around her and she says things that can be like borderline triggering, I'll just cringe. And I might bring it up like once or so to my husband and then keep it moving. It's not as it used to be. So, but glory be to God. Hopefully I can listen back to this a year from now and I can say I've improved. Like, I would love to be in a place where I can listen to her speak and she'll say the odd thing that's quite triggering or quite annoying, and I'm not triggered by it at all. I would love to kind of just listen to her speak and just be like, almost like ignore what she says or it not be anything to me at all. But yeah, so anyways, in the steam room, that's what happened. Came back from Budapest really refreshed, transformed, to be honest, and has just been put on this journey ever since. So that was in February. Been on that journey ever since, and I feel like I've been able to hear God clearly. I've been able to be more submitted to God. I've been able to, get clear direction now, purely based on the fact that I dealt with that issue, and that issue was a very big issue. And the thing is, the devil will try to let you hold on to certain things, and I feel like the devil will try to send certain people into your life sometimes to corrupt your path. It's actually funny as well. Like, before we go, there's something that somebody said, and somebody said that the devil believes in you more than you believe in yourself. And that when somebody said that, they said that based on the fact that the devil knows that you have potential because God has set your path and you are going to do all these great things for the kingdom of God, right? But if he puts things in your way, he's scared that there's a chance that you can actually do it. He doesn't want it to actually happen. But he's like, no, this person can actually do it. And God has given this person all of the gifts and all of the anointing to make sure that they can do this. But if I make them if I make them walk around with all this unforgiveness, or if I make them walk around with all this anger, if I make them walk around with jealousy, if I make them walk around with bitterness, then they will be so blinded by all these things, then they won't be able to actually walk in their true God-given path. So that means is like the devil knows that you are destined for greatness. You need to know that you're destined for greatness, and you need to know that it's really like God has written something for all of us. So that's something that's been very interesting for me, because I'm like, no, like the devil really tried. He's tried with me. And now that I'm free from that, I've been able to see clearer. I've been able to see clearer, hear clearer. and journey with God better, be able to read the Bible. And I've decided to start from scratch, reading the Bible, and reading the Bible and hearing from God, it's just been such a beautiful experience. And so by the grace of God, I will continue to grow. And by the grace of God, I'll get closer and deeper with my relationship with God. And I rebuke and reject any spirit of deception, any spirit of confusion, any spirit of anger. I reject and rebuke any spirit that is not of God. I reject it. And I just want the Holy Spirit to fill me completely and always. And I just want to walk with God always, so that I can just be in his presence always. That's what I want for myself. So yeah, like I said, anyways, that this podcast is really just a conversation with myself, a form of accountability for myself, so that I can hopefully, by the grace of God, look at this in a year's time and be like, oh, but thank God I've grown, and things like that. And hopefully my conversations with myself can help you with your personal growth and journey. But yeah, guys, I hope what I've said has made sense. And I really do hope that you've enjoyed this episode. And I know that these episodes are a bit different. This podcast is a bit different to what, than most podcasts or whatever. But yeah, really I just want to be closer to God as much as I can. And I pray that Jesus will guide me, as he always says. He said he'll never leave us nor forsake us. So I know that he will literally never leave me nor forsake me. And one thing that I want to say before I go, guys, I recorded a video saying, because I just found out, and I was like, this is amazing, that do not fear or fear not has literally been mentioned 365 times in the Bible. And I just feel like this is an amazing thing, because it's like there's 365 days in the year. God wants us to walk around without fear. He wants us to lean on him, not on ourselves. So wherever you are, lean on God, fear not, because he's there with you. Okay, guys. Bye.